Someone knocked on the door, and they said, "Who is that?" And as soon as someone said "who," me being an American and a baseball fan, I immediately said, "Who's on first?" And they said, "Who?" It's an immediate gut reaction when you hear that word, "who." Who's on first? And Chuck immediately went, "What's on second?" I went, "I don't know who's on third." And he took off on Abbott and Costello, both of us back and forth. He knew every word of that routine. He also was very hip to comedy. He was hip to Red Fox. He was hip to Richard Pryor. He was no hick. He was no Johnny-come-lately. He was right on top of it. And I looked and I said, "Well, look at this guy. Look at that mustache. He's Errol Flynn with a guitar. He's got it, man." You know. So I heard his comedy routine. I think it's from Detroit in 1963. If you get a sample of it, it's a good 20 minutes, maybe half an hour long, where he does stand-up comedy. Just no music. He does play, but there's a part he stops and does comedy. And I've seen him live a few times when he just likes to be funny with the crowd. Fantastic. Greatest entertainer I ever saw. And had the audience right there in the palm of his hand. And not just his lyrics being funny, but he knew how to crack a joke and deliver a joke. He said when he went inside that he learned accounting. Smart. He learned to be an accountant. I don't know if he ever became a CPA, but that's what he did when he was in. I don't think it might have affected him psychologically. I don't really affected his career. When rock and roll is so strong. I mean, look at people go to prison. Errol Flynn was up on rape charges, and he went right back to make the movies. Once you're popular, you're popular. But I don't think we'll ever know. We'll never know the answer to that. Maybe we're not supposed to know. When I hear certain lyrics from songs that come right out of the book of Chuck Berry. Although maybe the music itself doesn't sound like Johnny Be Good or Roller Beethoven, it's the style of lyrics that works. So they're very, what the Beach Boys did with fun, and so it's very American. And that's what Chuck did. He really captured Americana in music on a 45 single. And so when I hear those things, I said, these are the gods of music. Brian Wilson and Mick Jagger and John Lennon and those guys writing songs. Maybe subconsciously they don't know it, but Chuck Berry's coming out of you. Whether you want to recognize it or not, I'm hearing it.
Do you think we would have had the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, if it hadn't been for Chuck Berry?
We'll never know. We'll never know. We might have not had the kind of Chuck Berry the kind of Rolling Stones or the Beatles we have. Because, like I say, when Keith Richards was getting started, that was his guy, Chuck Berry. It's how him and Mick Jagger met. Well, they had already met, but they were on a train later, and one of them had a Chuck Berry record. And then they got to talking about how they were both fans of his. And that, united those two artists. And then they formed the Rolling Stones around that. But we will never know. If Chuck hadn't have been there, what would have happened? I mean, for one thing, if he wasn't there, we wouldn't have the song Surfin' USA. That's a monster hit. We would have never had it.
And do you think he is the father of rock and roll?
The founder of rock and roll. I'd say the founder, the creator of it is, there's just no getting around it. He, like I said, he listened to Jimmy Reed, and he listened to Nat King Cole, and he listened to Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters and everybody else, and then threw it all into a pot, mixed it up, stirred it up, put it in his guitar, put it in his brain, and boom. The greatest line that you're going to hear in history is not just rock and roll, and Chuck Berry wrote it. You don't have to be American to understand this. When Chuck Berry wrote the line, "Roll over Beethoven and tell Tchaikovsky the news," he could have easily been saying, "Look out, Eisenhower, and tell Richard Nixon the news." It was a revolution, is what it was. And it was a revolution. It was coming. Bang. So when Chuck made that line, I listen to that, and I still get the chills when I hear that, because he's gone way back to the two greatest musicians of all time, Roll Over Beethoven and Peter Tchaikovsky. And he mentions those two and says, "Look out, because here we come." Nobody wrote that but him.